Right, guys, welcome back. This is an episode that has sort of been boiling for some time. I'm denied about how to approach it, but I'm super excited about sharing it with you. This is going to be a regular feature once a month. Tim Green and I, my good friend from Subdial. Timothy, good morning.
How you doing, sir?
Yeah, good to see you. Are going to get together and we're going to talk about a new subject every month. Primarily because for the last year or two, you've heard me talk about Subdial and Tim and the watches that I've bought and sold through him. And honest to God, most watches that I own are as a result of late night conversations that Tim and I have had, with naughty pics being sent back and forth. Sorry, that's not the watch stuff.
Just watches. Just stick to the watches.
And so I'm super grateful that we could do this. This week's first episode is going to be about why I decided to buy a Roger Dubuis. Now hold tight, people are going to hear the name and they're going to think about skeletons, they're going to think of Lamborghinis, they're going to think rubber tyres. But it's a very different product to the one in which you might be thinking about. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to have a quick overview of your background, Tim, just for anyone who doesn't know, and what Subdial are up to. As well as that, we're also going to look at I've given Tim a few budget constraints for independent watchmakers because we just thought it could be fun to... And by the way, I don't know your answers either.
No, you don't. So, and we're not going to use the I word for invest.
No, we're not using invest. We're not using the word investing. And it's going to be, hold it, 10K, 25K, 50K, 100K. So we've got 4 variations. And not retail price, but secondary market price, which we thought was interesting because it's accessible. You can actually go and buy them. But before we get into all that, Tim, give us a quick brief. Who are you, sir? What do you do? How the hell did you get into watches?
Tim Green. I'm head of commercial at Subdial Watches in the UK. And I'll start with Subdial first. Subdial is a collector-first watch trading platform. So I'm a collector. We are collectors at Subdial. And we've built something that I think is exactly what a collector of watches, fine watches, but not just fine watches, would want. It makes it easy to take what you have in your collection and say, actually I've had enough of this, Laurent Ferrier or whatever, and I'm thinking about trading it in and going for a Patek. We make that process super easy. And there's a number of ways that we're able to do that. We've invested heavily in technology. We're very close to market pricing. We have a partnership with Bloomberg, and we have the Subdial Bloomberg Index, which is something that enables us to track market data, understand pricing, both on a buy side and a sell side. So we have full transparency with our clients on what is the true value of your watch, how quickly are they trading, and therefore what's our position on being able to take it in and trading off against another watch. So I think where we are at the moment is we're in a really strong position. I'd argue that we are the collector's choice, certainly in the UK, for watch trading. And I'm really proud of that. I enjoy being a customer of Subdial. Will
you disclose your paperwork? Will you disclose the volumes that you've put through the business personally as purchases? And like the Prime Minister being asked to show his investments?
I think we should skip that.
But no, in truth, it's absolutely right. It is for collectors, by collectors. That's true. And by the way, Tim's not paid me a sausage to say this, any of this today. But in fact, he's cost me an awful lot of money. But wonderful watches over the years. No, it's true. The platform is design orientated. So the reason I think that a lot of friends of ours now have come to Subdial over the years is because it's design orientated, beautiful to interact with. I think you're fair on your offer. You're quick on your sell, and you give people the options. So you do consignment as well as
we do. Yeah, we do commission sales. Yep. But we buy. About 50% of the watches that we have on our site are own stock from us. And obviously if we're doing a part exchange scenario, even if you're buying a commission piece, we would buy yours. So that we have to have some skin in the game in that sense. Yeah. But we also have this ability to have off-market watches that we're able to source. And I think we'll talk about that when we come to the Roger Dubuis.
Yes.
But no, you asked me about my background. I'm an engineer and a management consultant, but I've always been someone that likes shiny things. And that's watches since I was a little boy. It's cars since I was a little boy and push bikes since I was a little boy. Yes. So I continue to collect those things. And Yeah, I'm lucky to still have a wife because it can get complicated.
And you've got eclectic taste, it's fair to say.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons that I love Subdial as well, by the way, is because the odd stuff that comes onto the site is exciting for many of us.
Well, it surprises me sometimes what we get into stock, but it's definitely a diverse range that we have, and it's everything from Tag Heuer through to Grand Complication Patex. It's everything from £1,000 to £500,000, and I don't think there's an upper limit. Frankly, you know, we get in the watches that I think are right for the website, and we know that we've got customers for, clients for. So yeah, we're part of the joy of that is that you meet customers, collectors at all stages of their watch collecting journey. It might be that they are getting married, they're buying one watch, or it might be that they've graduated and this is like an entry point into watch collecting. They've always wanted something, and that's a particularly nice scenario because you've got someone that comes along and buys an Omega Speedmaster, whatever. They wear it for a couple of years and then they'll come back and they'll say, you know what, I've been thinking about maybe it's an IWC, or well, maybe not a Lange one. But yeah, and we've got all of that, and it's difficult this time. At the moment in the market, if you were to do, you can't offer that service in new watches because you can't go to Rolex and say, I'd love to compare a Submariner with a Datejust. They don't have Submariners. They might have a Datejust, but it'll be a two-tone or whatever. And so we're able to bring out all those watches and have a proper conversation, and it really is a passion of mine. It's a passion of all of ours at Subdial. So we'll talk watches and we'll talk from experience. And I'm not the best salesperson. I don't ever pretend to, but I have a passion for watches. And if a watch is not to my taste, I'll tell you why.
Yes.
And that will
You've told me why many times.
I have, yeah.
When that message has been sent over at some point, and don't do it. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Or the opposite. And that's the nicest thing is actually. You're absolutely honest, which is the best place to be and powerful.
And obviously, we have that background of the foundation of the data. So there's the subjective side of it, where tastes, trends, all of those sorts of things. But we're able to say, where has the price point been? Where are we now? And to an extent, where do we think that's going to go? Because you can talk about trading volumes as well as price points. And so you can paint a real picture for a collector, and they can go into these very big purchases with their eyes open.
What have you got on the wrist today, Tim?
Today, I have a first generation Parmigiani Toric.
Look at those lugs. Look at those lugs.
It's a really interesting watch, So this is it's got the earlier sort of slogan. I guess the name on the dial is fully spelled out as Parmigiani Florio, whereas the newer versions, they've sort of minimalised that, and it's now a PF, and it's kind of a little bit more contemporary. This is the sort of, for a long time, not many people love this brand at all. King Charles being
is the most famous ambassador, and of course the business is up for sale. It's owned by the Sandos family, who are an interesting, very wealthy family. Got interest in multiple different industries, and they've put the business up. They own the Valscher. They own the Valscher manufacturer, where it's Hermes manufacture there. Richard Mille a little bit, Corum. It's quite interesting. I visited many years ago.
I like Corum.
What a beautiful watch. And proportionally, you are a fan of a smaller watch. Yeah, you've always been advocating for a smaller case size.
Not always, no.
Not always, no.
That's part of the issue I have being at Subdial is that, I think almost 3 or 4 times a year my tastes change. But certainly they're gravitating down in size.
Yes.
And like many people in the industry, I think tastes are shifting from sports watches to dressy watches, and from steel to precious metal. And right now, this is the sweet spot. I've for a long time been a Cartier guy, and so you've got all the lovely tanks and crashes and all of that stuff. I just get very excited about.
Tim recently picked up one of the most beautiful Cartier that I've ever seen. In fact, I was with you in Paris when you picked it up from Paris Watch Club. Yeah, what a beautiful tank that is, with a dial that flexes between sort of dark black,
blue, purple. Yeah, with applied breguets on it and platinum. Tank Louis has always been a favourite of mine out of all of the Cartier shapes. The Tank Louis just works. And it's got nothing to do with Jeff Goldblum, even though I think he's a hero of mine.
Yeah.
He loves one, and I do too. It just works.
We should talk about the fact that you've referenced the shift in recent years from sports watch, which I have on today, towards dress watch. I'm typically with you. I really like a dress watch, a simple dress watch, although today we're talking about a complicated dress watch. But I should say I'm wearing this Salon Ferrier Sport Auto in titanium, and I wore it last week for the whole week in Greece, and I was just saying to Tim before we started filming, incredibly comfortable. Somewhat controversial because people know the brand for exactly what we're talking about there, with elegant dress watches, beautiful time-only watches, wonderful design. And for me, honestly, this has become a very, very fast favourite of mine. Incredibly light in titanium. Beautiful bracelet. Almost looks like the sport line, the line sport from Jean, with the sort of inserts on the rubber inserts.
Absolutely.
Anyway, first sort of micro rotor, non-natural escapement movement. This is a lever escapement. Anyway, loving that watch, absolutely loving that watch. Please let me know your thoughts below. Got a bit of 70s vibes about it, but let's not forget Laurent himself was very, very influential in designing the Aquanaut. So incredible lineage, incredible history, loving that.
I think it looks great, and genuinely, you know, we're both in London right now, and it's one of those watches that is of a certain price point, but is not recognisable in the same way that a Royal Oak might be, or a Norton.
Yes.
So you can wear it around, and you'd have to be a pretty clued in
to make a move on it.
Do
you know what I love is how quiet the bracelet is, in the fact that it's not got beveling and it's not got finishing that makes it very loud like a Royal Oak bracelet.
Yeah.
And the design to me is still standout. But you're right, I feel very comfortable wearing it in many ways. So there we go. Those are the two watches. What we should talk about is this watch, which is the subject of this first conversation of ours. It's a very unusual, and by the way, guys, we've got a selection of independent watches knocking around on the table here. So if
price points,
all different price points, we can touch on those in a moment. But I thought it would be worth us just diving a little bit deeper into this particular watch, because I've had this for a while now. It's a watch that actually probably a year and a half ago now, I messaged him and said, look, you know, I think Roger Dubuis is interesting. Early Roger Dubuis is a different kettle of fish, a little bit like vintage Rolex and modern Rolex, two different things entirely. Let's talk a little bit about Roger Dubuis, because Roger Dubuis was founded in 1995 by Roger himself. And by the way, guys, this is not an exhaustive analysis of Roger or the business, but it's just a few things that I pulled up that I think are interesting. 1995, he founded this business. He was actually 57 years old. Did you know that? A bit like Kentucky Fried Chicken. You know, he was like 70 when he founded the business.
I didn't know that, no.
And he went on to make a lot of money, I think, before he died.
I don't know, who knows?
But 57 years old when Roger founded it. So watchmaker, he spent a lot of time at Longines in the servicing department. He then went to Patek and spent time in the after sales and the high complications department. And incredibly, and this is stuff I didn't know, but the business actually was very large. How many employees? And they had... Well, he teamed up with Carlos Diaz in the 90s. So he was the sort of maverick salesman. And every watchmaker kind of needs that maverick salesman to take their business to another level. And Mr. Diaz apparently was that. Became very wealthy in the sale of the business. There were two different models. The key model is the Sympathy, which was sort of almost like a Chinese throwing disc. You know, those strange shape, you know, very squarish, but with interesting angles to it.
There's nothing else quite like
that, and I like that. And it's got retrograde sort of minutes, hours, and other things going on.
And there's all different complication points in that model. We've seen perpetual calendars, and they are absolutely stunning. Yeah, it's not for everyone. That shape is a little bit divisive, but it's very nice on wrist. I've had the pleasure
of seeing a few. Apparently, he religiously wore one.
Really?
Roger himself loved that shape, and it is a dress watch, isn't it? But it's very elegant.
It's a statement.
Not small, you know. It's got some size to it. And then we've got the Homage, which is not like the Homage that we think of now, which is sort of looking back and a reissue of a model. Because he spent so long at Patek, he loved the quality. He loved the Pension de Genève stamp, or the Geneva seal. And that's why all their watches, interestingly enough, at Roger Dubuis have always had the Geneva seal. So always at super high level. But this is sort of an ode almost to Patek watchmaking over the years. So if we think of 1995, this was made like 1997, 1998, 2000. This was a sort of an honouring of some of the great designs from Patek. And it's 40mm white gold case, brushed, polished, bezel, but a very unusual bezel that's sort of concave that I've never seen before on anything else.
Yeah, it's a bit like sort of coving that you get in the house.
Yeah, it is a bit like that. It is.
Yeah.
Really, really elegant. And the minute that you shared this with me, because I had come to you and said, Tim, I like the idea of something from Roger Dubuis, early Roger Dubuis. What's out there? And then through this system that you guys have started to implement, you managed to find something in the network and present this to me.
Yeah.
And immediately, and it's not often love at first sight, but it really was, because I think that's one of the most beautiful looking perpetual calendars on the market. It's instantly recognisable. It's different to any other perpetual layout in the market. The subdials are slightly different, which I love. The one to the left, the moon phase, is slightly smaller and slightly lower, whereas the day of the month is slightly bigger and just off centre. It's sort of asymmetric in that way. And then you've got the coloured leap year indicator, beautiful sort of dots around the perimeter, but not on the full perimeter, but slightly in. And then these Arabic numerals, these sort of beautifully exaggerated Arabic numerals.
Yeah.
So the minute you shared it with me, I just fell for it.
What I really like about this is the use of colour. You've got yellow in there, there's a green in there as well when you get to a certain point.
And there's a red, I think, as well.
Blues.
We've not seen that yet, but...
No. And the white lacquer dial is just superb.
It's got almost an off-white creaminess to it.
It does. And there's a different height in the dial as well for the subdials. That gives it a really nice... it's a lot to look at. And anything with Breguet numerals is a winner in my book, frankly.
Sorry, Breguet. Sorry, I said Arabic. My mistake. Breguet. Yeah, Breguet.
Right. No, it's okay. Or Arabic, but Breguet. No, it's absolutely superb. I love the use. I love the font type as well.
I do as well. And the proportions of it all.
Yeah.
What's really interesting as well is that he's chosen not to put, very much like Laurent, he has chosen not to put double reflective coating on it.
Yeah.
Because that's more of a traditional Patek thing, a vintage Patek thing. Whereas, with modern references, we see a lot of that, anti-reflective. And you can see why, but there's something charming about that, the fact that it doesn't.
Early Langer was exactly the same. I think it was early 2000s that they went from not using AR to having AR. And I think for certain very nerdy collectors like myself, that's quite a nice thing. If you catch one of their old watches, pre-Richemont, and it has no AR.
It really is special.
It's
the
very
Bulletin
cool
d'Observatoire, so as well as the Geneva Seal, it had that. So that was a further assessment that went on just to take it to a whole other level. Although what I should say is that having read a bit about Roger Dubuis watches of this era, it is apparent that they did time-only variations, they did chronographs, of course. The chronograph's probably the most sought after, I would say. Just the balance is beautiful.
I think
Monopusher chronographs.
based. Aren't they? And I think anything with a Lemania base, because obviously that movement was used from Breguet to Patek and everything in between. I think they're actually quite collectible e-wash movements. They
seem to command a premium in the market, at least the ones that pop up. Not that many do. What's really interesting is people say that the movements were not entirely reliable because, believe it or not, they were making 45,000 watches a year. Sorry, not 45, forgive me, 25,000, which is still an awful lot.
It's still a lot.
Forgive me, correction, 25,000 in 2008 when they sold to Richemont. So I think Roger stepped away a couple of years before that. Mr. Diaz built this incredible manufacturer in Geneva and they were making 25,000 watches a year. So I don't know where those 25,000 watches a year are because you just don't see many of these popping up. And it's a sort of watch that I've said this to you before when we've talked, is can you find me another one? Can you find me another one?
I haven't seen a white dial. There's a black dial I've seen.
But in there's 37mm and there's 40mm. Yeah. So they came. The homage came in two different size variations. I've never seen. Have you ever seen a 40mm white gold?
No, I don't believe so. No.
It's bizarre, but that's the sort of thing in the mind.
I'm 28 of them.
Yeah, 28 of course. And the reason he made that number of watches was because that was his bench number at Patek.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, I like that.
I went and showed the team at Roger Dubuis actually in London here, and they were very, very kind, very, very excited to see it as well. And they all admire watches from this era, despite the fact that the business now is very different. So yeah, that's the thing. And apparently in 2008, Richemont really wanted to buy them because of this facility they had. Now they made hairsprings, they made elements of movements there, and they thought, you know what, we could use that. Because that was probably the time in which the brands were really pushing into in-house calibers. Yeah. Every brand within groups needed to have an in-house movement. Yeah. So they probably utilised that. Really interesting. But what a beautiful watch to win. And just an example, we just thought it would be really interesting to use this as an example to discuss that system that you guys have developed. So let's talk about that briefly. How does that actually work in practice? Because you, at the moment, you can't. It's not an app. It's the website. So you need to go on your phone and go to the website. And the way I've done it personally is I have updated my collection on there, but I've yet to highlight to you or on the system that something's for sale. But how does it actually work then? Because of course I bought this, I didn't sell anything.
Yeah, so this part of our clubhouse is, rather than looking at market pricing, this is very much off market. And if you think about all of the trading that goes on around the world, all of the market stuff, the stuff that hits Chrono24, eBay, wherever, that's only a small slice of what's going on. Like, you and I might meet down a pub and say, I'll buy that Roger Dubuis for you, for £10,000 or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's an off-market trade. And there's a lot of that goes on around the world. I've been a forum dweller for years and years and years, and I've bought watches from people in Kansas City.
Yes.
I've never met them before, and they've got a username called, I don't know, Troll.
Do you want to call anyone out now? Just
no,
publicly,
I don't remember
from
it.
experience.
My memory for these things is rubbish. But you end up in those scenarios where you're sharing quite a lot of money ahead of getting a watch with someone that you've never met, and I have been stung before, long before Subdial, lost tens of thousands of pounds, which is you learn a lot from that. And this part of our website is about off-market trading, and what that means is you can have your collection of watches on our clubhouse, a little bit like Chrono24, but I'd say there's a bit more to it than that. So you can say, I've got a Parmigiani Toric Gen 1, and I love it. I'm interested to know if someone else might want to buy it, or I'm keeping it forever, or I'm actively trying to
And
move
how
it
does that
on.
work? Do you have a tab, a drop-down tab that says I'm selling, or I'm looking to sell, or I'm open to offers?
Yeah. So, and this is a very passive way of selling watches. So you might have 10 watches, 2 of which you're thinking about moving on. So you might say, I'm open to offers on it. Or you can say, I'm actively looking to sell. This is a price point, high and low. And then on the other side of it, you've got a wish list. And I mean, if your wish list on Chrono24 and Subdial Clubhouse is anything like mine, it's fairly intimidating.
I do share it publicly for support, often on my stories, which you may have seen, just to get feedback. And it is amazing how open people are to giving you feedback.
Oh, man.
What's that Richard Mille doing on there? Or,
Yeah.
What's that? That's horrible, that gold pilot. Anyway.
It's interesting. It's kind of that part of your account can be used as almost like a fantasy football sort of league. You can say, if I bought those watches now, actually you can track the values, and they might have gone up, they might have gone down. You can, avoid big heavy losses, and it only be digitally on the platform. But you can also say, look, there are these really rare references that I'm really keen on getting. Haven't seen one in the market like this. And say, I'm actively looking for a Roger Dubuis Homage perpetual calendar in 40mm, and select that actively seeking part, and we'll get a notification. And with the tens of thousands of collectors that we have in our clubhouse, we're able to say, okay, this guy is looking for this, and we've got these people that either have exactly that watch or something very similar. We're able to do a little bit of a matchmaking kind of service, and it takes away a lot of the risk that you have in meeting someone on a forum and sending 15,000.
And it's interesting that you point out the fact that it works, I think, particularly well with unusual references.
Yeah.
The more unusual, because you guys know the commoditization element of what modern Rolex is, right? You know now what the spot price is on a ceramic Daytona, basically.
Yeah.
But with these more unusual things, and actually sometimes it can be to your detriment to put something out publicly in the market and put a number next to it maybe, or exhibit that it's for sale. So that is interesting.
It really has been an interesting experiment to start with, and now it's a real service.
Are you seeing people out there in the community using it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's always nice when you have a ping. We have a system that pings when we have a wish list and a selling list
and a connection
that works, and you're able to say, you were looking for that rare Patek. Well, we have one, and I think it's fairly priced. the service that we provide in the middle is to get the watch into our workshop. We've invested very heavily in having the best watchmakers we can get, so we can make sure that it's working mechanically. We can make sure it's authentic. We can put our warranty on it if you want that, and then the watch that you get isn't just this person on a forum saying, "Oh, it's in perfect working order." Yeah. We're able to say, it's got a fairly high beat error, or service it for you and make sure that it's exactly the kind of watch that you would hope for.
We should say that Amy, head of watchmaking, she is head of watchmaker, right? Yeah, she's head of watchmaker, is incredible, honestly incredible. There are a few watchmakers that can communicate so clearly about the complicated aspects of watchmaking as she does, and with passion. And I've had the chance to go into the offices a few times over the years. Yeah. Beautiful setup. Yeah. She's got an amazing team there. It does take it to another level. It's that confidence factor, that trust factor now that, for me it's been huge over the years. Cause
it's great. They've saved me so many times when I'm like, I found this rare Cartier, and 5 minutes later they're like, actually that's a rebadged Lacouche, or something like that. Probably shouldn't have paid for that. That sort of thing.
I'd love to see some videos from within the business where you've handed some stuff over that you bought to Amy. She's then taken time to look at it, and then we have that feedback moment, and we're just on the fly on the wall moment to see the feedback on. Tim, you've gone and bought. You can't believe you've gone and bought this. It doesn't even work. There's no power reserve left.
There are so many of those. Yeah, it's good, but we make parts for watches where there are we're able to fix it using off-the-shelf stuff, or be able to. Some of these pre-quartz crisis watches, there just aren't parts available for them. So we have all of the skills and all of the tools to be able to bring these things back to life, and I think that's a real string to our bow.
Right, Timothy, here we go. So, quick fire stage.
Quick fire
stage. You've got £10,000 to spend on an independent watch on the secondary market.
Yeah.
What are you buying?
If I had £10,000, for me, independent watchmaking is about craftsmanship. And at that price point, the brand that pops to mind is Garrick. They're based in Norfolk in the UK. So there's a shout out to British watchmaking there. But they have a model called the S4, which is... it's not an in-house movement, it's a bought-in movement, typically ETA, but the dials have a guilloche in a way that you would assume it's worth so much more money. The craftsmanship is unparalleled at that price point, and there's customization that goes with it. So you can order an S4 and say, I want a salmon central section with this type of guilloche, and then I want a sort of sunburst finish on the outer dial, and I want the hands to be syringe or whatever else. And for that reason, the S4s that are on the market are all fairly unique, and you can create something that's really quite special. And at that price point, I just don't see anything else that touches it.
Very cool. David Brailsford, I know quite well over the years, the founder there. Yeah,
I mean, they're doing so well.
Yeah,
and now their S5 model has an in-house movement. There's a lot more customization available on it. The price point is different for the S5. And when you get in different complications, of course, that brings in an added cost. But I do genuinely think there's true value there.
And if you like that aesthetic, it's almost like it's a dressier watch. It's almost like a Roger Smith aesthetic in that sense.
Totally.
It's approachable, but it's got a Breguet aesthetic. It's got a Roger Smith aesthetic.
And if you want something special that has your energy in it, your thought process, they're able to do that.
Perfect.
And the quality is just unparalleled at that price. It really is fantastic. And in the pre-owned market, they're around £6,000 or £7,000.
Brilliant.
And you've got to wait until you find the one that sings to you because it's someone else's idea. But there are so many.
Right. £25,000 independent watch.
Yeah.
In the secondary market, where are you going to? I've doubled your budget.
Yeah.
I've more than doubled your budget.
And this is a difficult price point because you're almost at the price point where you could get a Roman Gotti AC.
Yes.
And that's a watch that you and I both love, right? And they're sort of 29, 30 now and edging down possibly.
Yes. Or you're in Laurent Ferrier territory for, say, a micro rotor for a classic.
Yeah, but genuinely, if this was my £25,000, I would buy a Nio Hida, which is a Japanese watchmaker. And controversially, up until recently, they use an ETA 7750 base, heavily finished, of course. But for me, it's about the dials, the craftsmanship in those dials. Again, like going from Garrick at 10K to Nio Hida at 25, that quality just goes up and up. And you're really buying into that 1930s aesthetic that you get with the Type 1s, particularly with the engraved silver dials that are so thick, and the quality and the craftsmanship, and you just look at it, it just makes me happy.
Immediately when you say his name, I think of those videos where he puts up and you see the sort of finishing on the hands, and the markers, the Breguet numerals, whatever it may be. It comes in a few different variations, but so much depth, so much finishing. And it takes a hell of a long time to buy a new one by all accounts. If you put your name down, there is a genuinely long wait list.
Well, they make 100 watches a year now. They've only been going since 2019. But I think when they first started, they were making 30 or 40 watches, and that slowly crept up over the last 5 years. And now they're able to offer the Type 1 through to the Type 4. They're all sort of circular watches, slightly different dials, slightly different finishing. And they've moved on to have their own in-house caliber and a rectangular watch in the Type 5. I've not seen any of those on the pre-owned market, but I have seen one or two Type 1s and Type 4s.
So under 25k, you reckon you could do it for us?
23, 24k.
Right. Get in touch with Tim Boy there if you fancy him.
Get in touch.
That's a challenge. That's a challenge to try and find one. I mean, because there are just so few out there. £50,000 used notes, Tim Boy, independent watch on the secondary market. What are you buying?
There are so many options.
What's going through your head? What are you thinking?
Well, again, independent watchmaking is about craftsmanship, and I was very fortunate. Yeah, you're bringing that.
I'm bringing the Journe out, but I don't know whether this would feature in your list or not. But it just immediately comes to mind.
It's the go-to independent, right? It's low production, high quality, very specific design language. You know that's an FB Journe from 10 meters away. But for me, the go-to would be Qinggan, Chinese watchmaker. They've been going now for a few years, and they've just brought out a new model, and I got the chance to see it this summer, hands-on. And I mean, I've been a collector for 20 odd years, and you start with sort of Omega, Rolex quality, IWC, that sort of thing, and then when you get a bit of cash, you go up to the sort of Langers and Pateks, and the quality at that point is sort of mind-blowing. And then I would argue that you step up again quite considerably to the Qinggan. And these are low production, the highest quality of craftsmanship I've ever seen. It's like seeing something in 8K when you've been working in, like 4K or UHD or even HD. TV,
Putting glasses on when you've not been able to see anything.
It's very difficult to translate the quality on photos, but when you get it in hand, you can't quite process it. Every single angle, facet has been thought about and executed to perfection. It's an amazing watch, and I'd encourage anyone to reach out.
Have you seen one pop up on the secondary market yet?
No.
So we're making an estimate here that we would be able to find one for under 50, but so it's an educated one.
Yeah. I think when this first batch that are being released, so the retail price is 46,500 USD. Okay. I think maybe that's CHF, but it's around the sort of £40,000 mark.
And how many do they make?
They make very, very few. I think it's less than 100. Okay. Possibly less than 50. Okay. And they're all sold out, and that's fine. I'm sure when they increase production, and probably they will do that, they will become on the secondary market around that price point, in the same way that Nio Hida have done. The watches that you that you pick up at 25k hit the used market at about the same price because you're reaching out to people that haven't been able to put their name on the list. But they're not willing to go for it. It's because you could wait until your time comes.
It's interesting how we've revered sort of Japanese craft in many ways over the years, but Chinese made hasn't enjoyed the same status, and things have changed in the last year or two. It feels like there's a couple of Chinese brands that are at different levels in the market that are bursting through, where we absolutely respect and admire the craft that's gone in.
For me, regardless of where it comes from, the proof is in the pudding. And you get hands-on with a Chingan, and I just don't... I'd argue that it's the Chinese Philippe Dufour.
Has anyone out there got hands-on with one before? Has anyone out there ordered one? We'd love to hear from you. Wow.
Yeah.
I must admit, I didn't know who they were, which is fantastic, but you learn something new every day. So, guys, please let us know below. Final one here, Dubuis. Final one for today's inaugural episode.
Yeah.
And I'm going to give you £100,000 to spend today. Have you spent £100,000 on a watch before?
Yes.
You have, personally?
Yes.
You've got a problem.
Oh, I know.
Serious problem.
It didn't actually last long.
What was it?
It was a Patek Philippe 3970.
Okay.
And it scared the life out of me, actually. You know, I've got young kids, so I've got a fairly active lifestyle.
Yes.
If I'm in London, I'm cycling.
Yes.
Much like you know. Yeah. And I've fallen off too many line bikes to be wearing 3970s. So,
I take it you haven't still got it?
No. Honestly, I didn't enjoy it. I love the watch, but the ownership
was a burden.
Prospect was different.
The watch owned you, you didn't own the watch?
Yeah, exactly.
What are you spending your $100,000 on independent-wise?
Kari Voutilainen.
Kari Voutilainen.
Yeah. I'll tell you a little story. A couple of years ago, at Watch Pro in London, Kari had a little stand there, and that day I'd just picked up a Lange 1815 chronograph, black dial, white gold, beautiful, beautiful watch. It was box fresh, and I was meeting various people who came around to Kari, and I was just aghast at how amazing his watches were. And he said to me, "Oh, that's nice." And I said, "Oh, well, I'll trade you if you want." And he said, "Which one would you want?" And I said, "Oh," and I picked this gorgeous green and orange watch, and he said, "No, that's my favourite." And then he sort of moved on and spoke to other people, and that story has stayed with me, because if I'd have just said, "Which one do you like the least?" Which one would you be willing to give to me? I might have swapped a watch. Yeah, I even emailed him afterwards, and I was like, "Great to meet you. If you still want to, you're welcome to it." But no.
What is it? Is it his dials? Is it his case shapes? Is it the movement finishing?
It is everything. It's so with the Chingan, you have a fairly conservative watch finished to 11 out of 10. Mm-hmm. With Kari, or with Voutilainen, you have a design concept that is the brainchild of Kari himself, and every single component is thought of in a intelligent, creative way and finished to 11 out of 10. Mm-hmm. So his movements are so three-dimensional. Not just when you're looking at it, you're looking at interior angles and you're looking at black polishing and all of those lovely things. This is something that you can look at in 3 dimensions and still understand every single square millimetre of that thing. Every micron has been finished to his initial idea, his design, his thought process, and it's very clearly a Kari Voutilainen watch. I think they're incredible. I would adore one.
What do they retail for? I've never even known.
They're about £100,000, but they retain their value on pre-owned. Yeah. So you can pick them up at, starting at sort of 90 all the way through, and depending on rarity, depending on complications, those sorts of things. But they're incredible. I was speaking to someone about Voutilainen, who had the privilege of going out to his manufacturer in Switzerland, and they asked him what was his proudest accomplishment, And rather than saying, "Oh, I'm really pleased with the guilloche on this model," or the hands that I finished for this, whatever, for this complication, he said, "Well, I created this screw head that is 2 parts, and it enables you to really get a strong and accurate finish and rotation, both on the shaft of the screw and on the screw head itself." And that was it. It's that intricacy that you're buying at that price point, that brainchild, that thought process, and the skill that is just unparalleled.
Incredible. Apparently a very nice man as well, which does make a difference.
He didn't reply to my email though. So.
Bastard. Gary, if you're watching, we want to hear from you, sir. Ladies and gents, we could go on forever, but let's just finish by quickly, Tim, just because it would be teasing to not have a quick rundown of what we've got here in front of us, because you've bought these you've risked your life, you've travelled halfway across the country with these watches, like a nomad with some sheep, and it would be wrong not to talk about them. So what have we got here to start with? We've got a watch I've not seen in the metal yet.
The brief was independent watchmaking, and we've got several at Subdial. This isn't stock, I have to say. This is my own personal watch.
Yes.
I picked up last week.
Baltic.
It's a Baltic recent stone dial edition from them. This is the London watch, literally number 1 of 200.
Red agate.
Red agate dial. It's about £1,300, and I think value for money is unbeatable.
We've always talked about Piaget, we've talked about stone dials over the years.
Yeah.
I've got something funky coming in time, which we will inevitably talk about on this channel, stone dial related.
Yeah.
But to bring it in at under £2,000 is a real achievement. That's the real achievement there. Super elegant, great size. This is an industrial watch. Sorry, forgive me guys. This case is incredibly new and stiff, and I'm going to be tugging on these buggers to get them out. But this is a brand that I've loved from a distance. Very quiet brand.
Yeah.
Incredibly industrial in its production.
Yeah.
Oxen Junior. Yeah. Pure fun. Look at that dial
At the
colour.
price point, I struggle to see anything that really touches it. You're getting something that's very affordable. That's £2,000, but has this sort of weekly calendar way of telling the time with all the different dots. So very minimalist, very industrial.
Yes.
And
what is this case? Is this steel?
This steel?
Steel.
Yeah. They do titanium. They do all sorts of materials. Some of the dials that they create are sort of rusty, sort of
heavily patinated.
Yeah.
This is just pure fun. It's one of those watches that can only bring you a smile. It can only but make you smile.
That's brilliant.
Summer in a watch right there.
It'll take a drop or a few knocks, unlike the 3970 we're talking about.
And a Velcro strap, which I love as well.
Yeah.
And it's just also reassuring to see that watchmaking can be unrefined like that. So it's quite satisfying seeing it alongside, something like this.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. Parmigiani, so just the twin to what you've got on there, maybe the sportier twin.
Exactly. This is a modern Tonda. This is a mid-size case, so 36mm, really thin, really highly finished. The kind of watch that when you get in hand, you do see the difference between that and a Rolex IWC Omega price point. It is a step up.
A step up from Girard-Perregaux, do you think?
I think so, yes.
I'm just thinking who comes up on that scale above there in the sports watch category.
Yeah.
You would almost consider it sort of Laureato-esque, but maybe even a step up.
Yeah, I think so. I put them side by side, and I would pick the Parmigiani. But obviously, pre-owned prices are, fortunately, way less. than retail.
So you would buy a Parmigiani right now, just given that.
Yeah, I really want this watch. That specific watch, I think, would partner particularly well with my first generation Torek.
Fantastic. Mr. Moomin?
Yes, Sarpaneva Finnish brand. I like them being creative.
Agreed. Agreed.
And you see a watch like that, it's undeniably a Sarpaneva.
And how can you not enjoy that thing being loomed up? And then a little moment from that Moomin when you lock eyes with it and it's fully vibrant and alive.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's fun. That's watchmaking.
Yeah, if you like Moomin, then what else are you going to buy?
This might work if you're about to head out into the new spacecraft.
Yes.
That would probably be the appropriate watch for the next billionaire that's going out into space to be wearing, no?
Well, look, I like what they're doing. It's not to my taste.
Yes.
But the execution is excellent.
Yes, agreed.
And I really enjoy the star wheel way of telling the time.
Agreed.
You and I both
We love
like
it.
the AP
Love the star wheel.
and that's a really nice execution of that. It's just something different but quirky, but also quite natural.
Whimsical.
About telling the time
I
that
agree.
way.
It's a very satisfying way of reading the time. Instant and satisfying, different. It's all there. Work and a brand that's got, as you say, distinct codes of design. You either love them or you don't.
Yes.
And Iron Man did appreciate them. He sourced out an work for Mr. Stark.
Really?
Yeah. What's his name? What's the actor's actual name?
Robert Downey Jr.
Robert Downey Jr. He went out of his way to source an work because he thought that was the watch that Iron Man would wear.
Fair enough.
Final piece in Antarctique, is that right?
Yeah, it's a Chapek Antarctique.
Oh gosh, sorry. There we go.
So that's unworn. So don't put it on, otherwise I'll
No,
not at all,
not at all.
But it's a split-second chronograph, a retro band, and skeletonized. I think it's incredible. I really do.
Domed.
I know.
Beautifully domed.
Our mutual friend
Tom's got one. Yeah.
And he adores it. I like that when you buy that watch, it comes with strap choices and screwdrivers and all of that stuff.
Movement's spectacular.
The
Amazing
movement
architecture.
is spectacular.
Really, really impressive.
And again, from a quality of finishing, it's unbelievable at that price point.
What is the price point on this, roughly?
It's about £45,000, maybe even 50 now with a bit of inflation. But pre-owned, even though that's not pre-owned, it's a new watch. We're selling it, I think, at 35,000. And for a split-second chronograph, that's great value. Let alone being low production, skeletonized, highly finished.
Agreed.
It's a really good bang for buck.
I'm just going to put this Journe on. What's going on with the Journe market right now? Are you optimistic about the future for Journe? It's seemingly been
buoyant
and unstoppable, even though there's been headwinds in various ways that collectors have been discussing.
God, you've put me on. I love them.
Yes.
I'd love to walk into FP Journe and buy a Havana dial chronometrist or a resonance.
Yes.
Or
Octa Reserve.
You like the Elegant, right?
Yeah.
I do too. I think that's a perfect tennis watch. But the pre-owned prices are, for many, including me, off-putting. I think they probably will stay high because they've got so many people with deep pockets buying into that brand that I think they will stay buoyant, and probably rightly so. But at that price point, where are we? £50,000-60,000 pre-owned. I'm not sure that's where my money would go.
Chanel coming in very recently to pick up MB&F alongside Journe, alongside Chanel, whom we love. And we will talk about a Chanel watch in due course. We've got a very special episode of Tim and I in Paris picking up another watch, but that's to come. So Chanel, strategically right now, seeming to be in probably one of the most interesting positions within the industry right now, out of all the groups. Could go on to be, in the next 10, 15 years, one of the big groups that we talk about.
And there's definitely a trend there of big brands buying into smaller brands. And it's only, I do hope that that's the way that Parmigiani goes. I like the principle that these small artisanal watch manufacturers have some strong foundations financially behind them, so that you can take that risk and buy a Jingan, or you can buy, I don't know,
Adidas,
that sort of thing, and not worry about it, and not worry that actually it breaks and you've got nowhere to take it to be fixed. That would help the independent watchmaking industry, I think, so much, knowing that you've got that sort of trust.
Tim Boy, I have to cut you off early. Sorry, because we are overheating on the cameras. We're getting dogs coming in left, right, and centre. We have a very tight timeline this morning, guys. Thank you so much for joining us, Tim. Thank you as always. We will be back. We'll be back next month with a new subject for you. Please let us know in the comments below what your thoughts are on the episode and the watches, of course, and even what you'd like us to discuss. Maybe we could take in down the line a request or two. But until then, go well. That's a wrap, boys. That's a wrap.
That was good, hey?